do it. Okay. It's 1:30 and time to begin the meeting of the Oklahoma City Traffic and Transportation Commission. We'll start with roll call. Commissioner Clare.
Present.
Commissioner Littlefield.
Present.
Commissioner White. Commissioner Schuline.
Here.
Commissioner Miller.
Here.
Commissioner George. Commissioner Milner.
Here.
Commissioners, due to a technical problem, we will be doing a voice recognition today. When we do a vote, it would be a yay or a nay. Not sure what the problem is, but we will adapt. First item will be the approval of the minutes of the November 19th, 2018 meeting. Do we have a motion?
I motion to approve.
We have a motion from Commissioner Milner. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Schuline. Any discussion? Okay, your votes, please.
Yay. Yay.
Motion's approved. We'll go now to the report for licensed taxi and record services. Sergeant.
Afternoon, Commissioners. I have our quarterly report for last year, but I also have some investigations I have to update you on.
Okay.
So our report for last year, would be on driver's permit. We had 14 new taxis, 17 renewed, and 1 replacement on 15 vehicles passed. We had 3 complaints and 1 field inspection. Limousine, we had 9 new drivers, 8 drivers renewed, 6 limos passed, 1 investigation, and 2 field inspections. On carriages, we had 3 new drivers, 2 renewed, 1 carriage passed inspection. Pedicabs, we had 9 drivers renewed their permits, and then 7 pedicabs passed. Also had 5 field inspections and 2 citations written on pedicabs. On shuttles, we had 3 new drivers, 9 renewed, and 3 shuttles passed. Have any questions about the report?
Yes.
Could you explain a little bit about what the 3 complaints were, the taxis, and what the citations were?
The complaints would be the complaints have been on the minimal fares that have been put that the taxi companies have been using out at the airport, and I'm about to touch up. That's going to be my first investigation. I'm going to be explaining. Citations were issued by a Bricktown officer for pedicab violations where they did not sit on the carriage stand to operate. Now I'm going to go into the rates. Taxi companies recently, or actually in the last 3 years, have been putting in for rate changes. I don't know if you remember with Twister Cab, when they put in for their business license, they had a minimum rate of $20. No matter where they picked up, no matter where they dropped off, it was $20. Well, those rates have increased to $35 and $40 now. I started an investigation on the meters of all these vehicles and trying to figure out how they are charging this. The meters cannot be, they can't count up and they can't count down from this $45 or $35 minimum. There's no way. They can program the meter to, when they hit the stop button, let me go back. When they first hit the button for hire, it starts the flag fee, which is anywhere from $1 to $3, and the meter starts running. Whatever destination they get to, they hit stop. It might say $5, $6. Example B, they go from the airport down to the Meridian Strip there. It might be $5 or $6. But when they stop there, they hit the stop button, it automatically goes to a $35 or $40 minimum. So you can see that patrons and citizens are probably, been getting upset about this fare because now they're seeing a flag fee plus mileage, and now all of a sudden it is a high rate. So been investigating all the meters. In the process of investigating all the meters, I had to shut down Thundercat for a week and a half. They had no meters in their vehicles. They were running a phone with an app, and they're not allowed to run applications on them with a phone. They had to have a meter. I also went out to the airport last Friday, ended up removing 10 cars out there because there were no meters in their vehicles. So I have had multiple complaints from the airport on this over the last 3 years. And I've been talking to the owners of the companies it's already been approved on the minimum rates, but I recommend that they stop the minimum rates so the complaints would stop, and they refused to do so. Mark Cranenberg is here to discuss the airport side of this because it's turned into an issue.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Mark Cranenberg, Airports Director at Will Rogers World Airport. Thank the Sergeant for allowing me to take a few minutes from his report time today. It's timely conversation regarding the minimums that some cab companies have been charging for fares from the airport. Ever since this process started, I think it was about 3 years ago, we very quickly started getting complaints from mainly at the very beginning out-of-town visitors who were visiting our city for the first time. And they were quite shocked that these minimums were creeping up to the $35 and $40 that some cab companies are charging today. I understand not all cab companies charge from the airport. So I want to give you a couple of examples. The Sergeant was talking about the Meridian Corridor, which is very popular because of the amount of hotels which are on Meridian. And again, 4 or 5 miles away, and people are getting charged $35. Well, they don't know that minimum is there. They get in the cab and they see the flag fee and they think it's going to be a reasonable amount. They know it's a very short trip, and then all of a sudden they get there and it's a $35 charge, which even may be added on to the flag fee fare. So we get complaints. We've had a lot of them at the airport the last 2 or 3 years, and in talking to Sergeant Bales, I understand he gets his own fair share of complaints that don't even come to the airport because they know that the city and the vehicle for hire inspectors over the taxi cabs and vehicles for hires. So this has become a bigger problem. Just this past weekend, a woman came home from Virginia. She lives up in the War Acres area, and it was about midnight. She typically likes to take Airport Express, and she makes a reservation, and typically that fare is about $25. I believe Airport Express has rings of distances where they charge the various fees. In this case, there was an Airport Express van, but it was reserved for an airline flight crew, so she had to go to the taxi cab that was there, and she asked how much it would take to get her to her destination, and he said $40, and she thought, wow, that's quite high. But it was the only alternative. And so she got in the vehicle, and by the time she got to her destination, it was just shy of $60 because the $40 was added on to the flag fare. So my point is that for whatever reason these minimums were created 2 or 3 years ago, I believe that there is a negative unintended consequence that has occurred as a result of it. And what I'm concerned about is customer service at the airport, whether we provide it as an airport department person or one of our ancillary stakeholders, whether it's the airlines or TSA or our ground transportation companies are providing service to the public. And I'm very concerned about the black eye that I believe it gives us at the airport and also the city when we get a rash of complaints over the last couple of years with these high minimums from the airport. I don't know what the solution is. I think that this is probably, I would ask that this be reviewed at least, this policy be reviewed. And at the airport, we would be welcome to be a part of that review process. I think when you go to an airport, when I go to another airport and I take a cab, and I don't consciously think, I wonder if the guy behind me is cheaper than the one I'm in, or I wonder if the guy that just left ahead of me is paying a cheaper rate than what I'm in. I think everybody assumes it's going to be the same price, and you just load and go. So maybe the rates are posted. That's fair. It's a requirement. But I assure you, when you're trying to load and go and get away as quickly as possible, you don't have time probably to read all the postings and advertisements that are in some cities on the cab. So I just say that this is becoming a bigger problem, and I'm concerned with our city with the new convention center, and we're going to have more out-of-town visitors and larger conventions. I know Sergeant Bales has talked to convention coordinates and they've been quite upset over this issue. So I just want to bring it to your attention from the airport's perspective that we see it as a problem, and we think that hopefully something can be done to make it better equitable for our passengers at the airport. Be happy to take any questions, but I thank you for your time. Thank you.
So currently I am working, going through the taxi companies and seeing where the rates are posted. Found out a lot of them are not posting them inside, so not all the companies have it programmed into their meters. Of course, different meters are used for different companies. The only company that is not doing minimals is Yellow Cab and Checker Cab. They are still running their meters as they're supposed to, with a flat fee plus mileage. Have any questions on the meters? Go ahead.
I was just asking if there were any questions from any of the commissioners. Okay, go ahead.
Just wanted to inform you about OKC Green Taxi is no longer in business. We had a repeat of 2015 with insurance, so they are no longer in business at this time. Another investigation that I fell upon was from Bricktown. It was on a overloading of a limo company. During that investigation, I had to talk to the National Traffic Safety Highway Administration agents, had to talk to DOT agents, talk to Troop S of the Highway Patrol, and was educated quite well on this matter now, on limos. So just to give you an update, limos are brought from the factory, and they are upfitted or structurally upfitted. If they're upfitted, that means that the insides are turned into limos. So when that company upfits the limo, they are supposed to put decals on the inside driver's door jamb to notify me, the inspector, of how many people they can hold. If they don't, or if I can't read it, then I'm able to call the company, and most of the companies will give me a full packet of what they've done to that vehicle. The structural side of it is when they actually lengthen the limos, when you get to the stretch limos. So talk to many companies across the United States about this. So now we have a better understanding on and are changing how we inspect limos to make sure they don't overcapacitate the vehicles. We don't want to have a New York incident. So that's the update on that one. Last but not least, electric vehicles, they're here. Shuffle is in town. They do not fit any of our ordinances. I contacted DOT, contacted Troop S for state troopers, and we have no state legislation on these. They are working on it as we speak. The vehicle that is here is called a Polaris Gem. It can only go 25 miles an hour. It cannot go on a city street that is above 35 miles an hour. So they would have to route plan in the city where they can travel. Also, they're not required to have airbags. They're not required to have backup lights because it is a low-speed vehicle. So we are still looking into this. We've got a lot of information. We'll keep you updated on that. Have any questions?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay, we'll move on to the consent docket. Is there any discussion regarding the consent docket? Staff?
We've got no further comment on it. All the items that appear on the consent agenda are recommended for approval. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion on the consent docket?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Schuline. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Clare. Is there any discussion on this, any of the items? Okay, then we'll have a vote. Those in favor of the motion to accept the consent docket, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Motion is approved. Move on to items for individual consideration. 5A from Raquel Bragg, consider request for the additional addition of stop control on South Walker Avenue at Southwest 69th Street to establish an all-way stop control. Is there anyone here to speak on this matter? Okay, staff input.
Okay, we've got our comments before you. This is kind of an unusual case. We've got a request for adding stop control at a kind of a mid-mile location on Walker Avenue. You'll notice in the comments and on the next illustration that will appear on your screen that there are every intersection along Walker Avenue from Southwest 104th Street, actually to the north side of the roundabout, just north of Northwest 10th and Walker. Every controlled intersection on Walker is regulated by a traffic signal. This would be kind of an odd location for a driver to encounter an always stop condition. If you look at the traffic volumes, we carry about 94% of the volume on Walker Avenue and about 6% on the side street. So it's for this reason that we are not recommending the use of stop control at this location, as it would likely prove to become a traffic hazard.
Okay, is there a motion regarding item 5A?
I make the motion not approve it based on the staff's recommendation.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Miller to disapprove. Is there a second?
Second.
A second from Commissioner Clare. Is there any discussion on the matter? Okay, Commissioners, could we have your vote? Those that agree with disapproving item 5A, could I have your vote, please?
Yay. Yay.
Okay, are there any nays? The motion to disapprove item 5A has been approved. Okay. Let's move on to item 5B.
Yesterday we received a request from the applicant for continuance of this particular item. It's not indicated on the letter as to which meeting it should go to, so we're going to recommend that it be continued to the Commission's February meeting.
Okay. We have a request from the applicant to withdraw their hearing today. Is there a motion to move this to the February meeting?
Mr. Chairman, I move to move this agenda item to next month.
Okay, there is a motion from Commissioner Schuline to move this item to the February agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Littlefield. We'll have a vote. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. In favor?
Yay.
Okay, thank you. No nays. Okay. This has been approved to move to the February docket. Move on to item 5C from Lydia Leslie. Consideration to establish a full-time passenger loading zone on the north side of Southwest 4th Street from approximately 130 feet east to 275 feet east of the east curb line of South Robinson Avenue. And is there someone here to speak?
I'm Lydia Leslie. I'm the applicant.
Okay, your name, address, and have you filled one of these out?
No, I didn't know I needed to be in the applicant. Do I need to do that? I
Yes,
thought
ma'am. We'll go ahead and get one
Okay.
after you make a presentation.
I'm with Kimberly Horn. My address is 13829 Wireless Way.
You have up to 5 minutes to speak.
Okay. So this applicant is in response to the Omni Hotel that is being constructed at 4th Street in Robinson area. The applicant wishes to desire a loading zone on the south side of the hotel. And the reasoning for that is we have a drive-through area on the north side, but it has a porte cochere in it, and it'll be mainly for drop-off of passenger vehicles. When we have an oversized vehicle, there's a need for like large limousines, a bus, things of that nature, to come and unload some passengers on the south side of the Omni Hotel. So this area would be for that passenger unloading. And we're requesting it to be a full-time unloading, not 8 to 5, just to do the nature of the hotel business, and that it'll have drop-offs beyond the normal hours that would be anticipated.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak on this staff input?
All right, you've got our comments before you. As Ms. Leslie indicated, the request is going to be for a a full-time loading zone. I anticipate that it'll probably be used for valet purposes or something in the future. So any motion made by the commission in favor of the item would need to include the provision that it is in effect on a full-time basis, which would prevent it from being used for parking purposes outside the hours of 8 to 6, Monday through Friday. I'm happy to answer any other questions that you might have.
Is there a motion regarding item 5C?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve it with staff's recommendation to make it full-time.
Okay. Motion approved by Commissioner Miller with staff modifications. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Littlefield. Is there any discussion considering this matter? Okay. We'll put it to a vote. Those in favor, respond.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Those that vote against, motion is approved. Let's move on to item 5D, brought to us by Tom Gunson. Consider a request for an addition of stop control on Culbertson Drive at Northeast 20th Street to establish all-way stop control. Is everyone here to speak on that? Okay.
Hello, good afternoon, Commission. I'm Tom Knutson, and I'm the applicant. And first, thank you for just giving this your time and attention. We recognize that you all make a lot of decisions in our city regarding traffic flow that are logistical challenges, so thank you. And we just wanted to present this request. It's off of Northeast 20th and Culbertson. Right now we have a two-way stop, a stop sign running east and west, and we wanted to make the proposal to make that a four-way stop sign so that we could have traffic stopping north and south as well. We've got cars that are just barreling down Culbertson. We've got no stop signs from 18th Street all the way to 22nd Street. And there's a lot of pedestrians on Culbertson. You've got a bus stop that's on 23rd and Kelly that a lot of people walk up to. And our neighborhood in particular is experiencing a level of renewal. We've got some younger families that are moving in with small kiddos, myself included. We're at that intersection. We've got a 2-year-old. And we just think it makes sense to have a stop sign. And we would love any consideration. To my knowledge, it wouldn't affect the flow of traffic all that much, and it just makes a lot of sense to just have that there in regards to the safety and health of the neighborhood. With me represented are some of my neighbors from the neighborhood association, and if I'll invite anyone to come up and make a comment if there's fill in the gaps if I've missed anything. But thank you again for just hearing this out, and thank you for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else here to speak? Looks like
I'm Rachel Smith. I live in the neighborhood for about 2 to 3 years now.
Excuse me, have you filled one of these
Yes,
out?
I have. I handed it to
Okay.
her.
If you would state your name, address, and you have 5 minutes to speak.
Yes, Rachel Smith. I live at 904 Northeast 18th Street. I've lived in the neighborhood for about 3 years, and I'm also working in the neighborhood a couple blocks down at the OU HSC campus. So sometimes I'm walking to work, sometimes I'm driving to work, and then I'm coming home in the same area. So there's a lot of traffic, people going down to the OU HSC campus, a lot of it coming off of 23rd Street, and they'll take that shortcut through Culbertson down to the parking garages. There's times that they are going up to 50 miles per hour. That's pretty common in the morning, also at 5 o'clock up to 6 o'clock, and then I'm seeing a lot of traffic when I'm home after work walking my dog. So I'm out in the neighborhood a lot. I also know of several people living in the neighborhood. A lot of people at my company are very diverse group of people from all sorts of places that come to Oklahoma to work. So a lot of them don't have vehicles, so there's a lot of walking traffic at these high traffic times. So I'm just hoping that we can maybe deter some of the high speeds that go down that street. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else? Need your name, address, and have you filled one of these? Okay.
Yeah. I'm Andriana Pritchard. I live at 912 Northeast 20th Street. So we're just about 3 houses in from the stop sign area in question. I wanted to point out that in this area, Northeast 20th Street and Culbertson, there are no sidewalks. So any pedestrians that are walking in the street. I, like Rachel and a lot of our neighbors, walk my dog a lot. I walk to meetings at the Capitol when I have them. I'm out and about a lot. There are a lot of kids in this area next door to us, across the street from us, Tom's kids. So there's a lot of foot traffic in this area without a safe space to do that outside of the street. One of the other things that I wanted to draw your attention to, on the map behind you, you can see the curve in Culbertson Street. So when you're walking, it would be south on Culbertson, properly on the street, you're walking into the flow of traffic. You're walking into a curve. So traffic that is coming north on Culbertson is rounding a curve and cannot see people who are walking. And often, end up having to swerve. We have to jump out, onto people's lawns, out of the way. And the speed at which people go, this makes this even more kind of a game of chicken or hazardous in the sense. And there are often, as you can see in the picture now, there are cars parked along that curve. And so that makes it even harder for people to see. So you have to walk further out into the street, facing traffic, and kind of try to avoid those cars. So I think the lack of sidewalks is one of the things that makes this a particularly relevant application. And even if a traffic study doesn't suggest that it's necessary, experiencing this from the ground level up, it really does feel like a necessary intervention. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else? If you would come forward, we need your name, address, and you have up to 5 minutes to speak.
Hi, my name is Tina Hammond, and my address is 947 Northeast 18th. I live part-time in the neighborhood and work in the neighborhood, and I actually was the general contractor for a house there on 20th and Culbertson. So I spent 6 months last year right there at the intersection. I was sitting in the driveway in my car. I was at the intersection driving back and forth, trying to kind of manage all of my subcontractors that were coming and going. Of course, I was a part of the traffic situation at that time. But there is a lot of foot traffic. My daughter and my grandson also live in the neighborhood. There is a church and a daycare a block away. So if you, I don't know if they can bring the picture back up, but there where it comes off of 23rd and Kelly, there's actually no stop. It's just a Y. So people start speeding from 23rd, and then they just take the Y and continue on Culbertson. And so their first stop sign is at 18th. So by the time they're at 20th and Culbertson, they're moving. Well, my daughter pushes a stroller to the daycare at 21st and Culbertson. It's a church, and there's a daycare in the church. And like was already said, there's not a sidewalk there. And we're not requesting a sidewalk. We're just saying that if there was a stop sign there, it would just slow the traffic down. There is a lot of foot traffic coming from on East Drive. There's a lot of apartments. And I think some of those are like veterans housing and those coming out of incarceration and things like that. And so those people are walking to get to the bus stop at 23rd. And so that I had a lot of people stop and talk to me while I was at the intersection. And I think that's all I have to say. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak on item 5D? Yes, sir, your name, your address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
My name is Jerry Cable, 817 Northeast 20th Street, Don't even know where I live. I've been there since 1990, and the intersection is just 5 or 6 houses down. The neighborhood has changed dramatically, and with the high traffic at the OU, and Phillips ties into Culbertson, people use Culbertson Drive to access Phillips. So they're traveling at a high rate of speed, and I take care of our gateway entry, and then there's a corner of the park that I work at, and people are passing me like 30 and 40 miles an hour while I'm there trying to work in the park. And I just feel that here in the last 2 months, somebody ran over our stop signs for traveling too fast, and a year ago somebody plowed down one of our light poles for traveling too fast. So I just want to express the importance of traffic control by slowing the speed down is more the concern. And the stop sign, we think every 2 blocks or 3 blocks is better than no stop sign at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak on item 5D? Anyone else? Staff input?
All right, you've got our comments before you. I'm going to draw your attention to a few items that appear on the first page of your staff report. You'll note that the current traffic volume distribution at this particular intersection shows about 1,500 vehicles per day on Culbertson itself and about 244 crossing on Northeast 20th Street. We did conduct a speed study that's up on your screen right now. During that time, we observed an 85th percentile speed of 30 miles an hour, and the highest observed speed that we recorded on Culbertson was 37 miles an hour. Currently, the location does not meet the Commission's current operating policies and procedures for the use of always stop control at the intersection, but appears to be a well-supported request from the neighborhood. So happy to answer any questions that you may have regarding this item.
Okay, is there a motion regarding item 5D?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve this request. I normally I don't think we should be using stop signs for speed control. We're taught not to do that in traffic school. But the lack of any other traffic calming devices that we've been working on, the policy that's been put in place, we'd like to put this request over in that category. But since we don't have that now, all we do have is what you're requesting, and listening to you with no sidewalks and the pedestrian traffic you have, I just see no other way but not to approve your request.
Okay, there is a motion to approve by Commissioner Miller. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Schuline. Is there any discussion regarding 5D? Yes.
Has this neighborhood situation been looked at in regard to the rules that are?
Well, currently, the only thing that's available in that program, which is kind of a user-funded program, would be the driver speed feedback signs.
Is the neighborhood aware that that's an option?
I think the neighborhood would have to answer that one. I'm not sure, because I have not spoken with anyone from the neighborhood regarding this particular program. I think what Mr. Littlefield is talking about is the city has made available has started making available a program for neighborhoods to kind of do almost like a self-service program for traffic calming purposes, and the only thing that's available currently in the program is a driver speed feedback sign. It's something that's mounted. They'll need to come up.
If you would come back up to the podium, please.
I didn't know that that was available, but one thing I wanted to say is in the 6 months that I was working at the intersection, because of the curve in Culbertson, I actually had 4 near accidents from speeding cars coming down there, just myself. And I was looking and paying attention. I just wanted that to be noted.
Any other discussion? Yes, please. Ma'am, excuse me, there's a question from one of the commissioners.
Welcome back.
I'm sorry.
No worries. I'm a firm believer in a neighborhood knows what's best for a neighborhood. And the current neighborhood position for here is fascinating. So I'm a firm believer that something needs to be done. What we look at over and over again for years is that stop signs really rules available to neighborhoods. There aren't really designed to control speed. And these driver feedback devices are something that are available to neighborhoods, could be in conjunction with the stop sign. It might help
Mhm. I am. Mhm. Mhm. Okay. I think talking to Tom Knutson would be better since he's part of our since he's our vice president. I think he would be a better person to talk to. Thank you. Thank you so much. It could, yeah. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak? Yes.
I would just add to that I don't think, and Tom can disagree with me, but given the finances of the neighborhood association, I don't think that a speed regulation sign is probably in the cards. And even so, I would imagine that the neighborhood would agree that could be supplementary in the future to a stop sign. Yeah.
Anyone else?
Again, I'm Jerry Cable. In reference to the speed sign, the control sign, there was one out there several years ago, and I don't know what ever happened to it or what the results from it had, where that showed people how fast they were going. So evidently, when it's up there, it works. When it's not there, it doesn't work. But at the same time, I would say 90% of those yards along there are all bermed. And that's a sight vision for traveling cars. And people that are walking on the right side of the street also cannot see the vehicles coming at a higher rate of speed. So the speed control sign has been there before, and I don't know what the results were, but again, if you've noticed and been up and down Culberson, all the sides, the yards on both sides of the street are bermed. So it's really hard, like they say, to even see to drive around that curve.
Okay, and just for the information of the neighborhood, we do have a driver speed feedback cart. It can be deployed for like about a week at a time because it's battery powered. It doesn't have solar capability, so it'll discharge after about a week. But if you're interested in having that replaced in the neighborhood, you can get with us after the meeting, and then we can see about making arrangements to have it replaced.
Okay, any other discussion? I agree with what's been said as far as stop signs are really not good speed controls, but I would agree that in this instance something needs to be done. But I would also encourage you to please get with Mr. Chai regarding the speed notifications. Okay, at this time we'll have a vote on item 5D. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nay? Okay, the ayes have it, so item 5D is approved. Let's move on to item 5E, a request from Amber Pankey, which is to consider request to establish always stop controls at number 1 Griffin Park Boulevard at Northwest 174th Court / Locust Grove Lane. Item 2, Griffin Park Boulevard at Northwest 176th Street. Item 3, Griffin Drive and Northwest 176th Street. Number 4, Millville Lane and Northwest 175th Court. And number 5, Park Grove Drive and Northwest 172nd Street. Is there anyone here to speak on behalf of motion of item 5E? If you would, state your name, address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Hi, I'm Amber Pankey. I'm at 1508 Northwest 174th Court. That sounds like a lot of stop signs that you guys are considering, so I appreciate your consideration, and thank you so much for your time. I've actually been in the neighborhood since 2009, so I've watched it grow by leaps and bounds. We were part of the first phase, and then it in turn went to a second and third phase. with in turn no stop signs with a lot of houses. And so to give you a reference point, about 80% of the Griffin Park neighborhood households have school-age children. So lots of kiddos, including my twins who are 4 years old. So I, of course, am very passionate about this and why I've worked hard to develop a committee to determine probably where the best stop sign should go in the neighborhood. We took that under careful consideration of people that had been in the neighborhood for a long time. And so I actually live at Griffin Park Boulevard and 174th where they intersect. And so I actually have a good judge of the traffic all the way down from 176 that comes down, and then basically 4 blocks with how my house sits. And so I've watched the traffic flow up to 40 miles an hour plus, and I know it's not about speed control, but there's also a park that's in our neighborhood that runs along that boulevard. And so with 1 million school-age children that are in that area, it's very important that I think we get these stop signs in place for safety issues. We also, in turn, when the neighborhood was developed with the 3 different phases, it in turn connected Durbin Hills, our neighborhood, and then Copper Creek. And so it has become a cut-through to Durbin Hills in our neighborhood, to Copper Creek, in between Western and 178th. And so that's why you'll be hearing from Durbin Hills, the Durbin Hills group after me, because we're both working to help resolve this issue. So I think that kind of concludes what I wanted to say. I just am so passionate about getting this accomplished for the safety of my kids and all the kids in the neighborhood. And I know that the studies might not reflect what's really happening, but I've watched it for several years now. And so that's all I have. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak on item 5E? If you would, your name, address, and you have a...
Hello, I do have a blue sheet that I turned in.
Okay.
I'm Angela Kottner, 17517 Melville Lane. This is a speed control issue, but also a visibility issue from my perspective. So I am, if you look at the image there, we are on Melville Lane, and it's part 4, that stop sign. There is a blind curve that is just a few doors down from my house. So our new 16-year-old driver who's backing out of the driveway is frequently concerned that someone is going to sail around the blind curve and hit her as she's trying to maneuver her car out of the driveway and down the street. Our middle school child is one of the many middle school children who just roam around the neighborhood all day long on their scooters and their bikes and walking to the park and to the pool and all the great things we have in our neighborhood. So there are kids, as Amber said, there are kids everywhere all the time, which is why we moved into the neighborhood. We moved in 2017 in a late stage in a newer construction. I was shocked that there were no stop signs. In all of these intersections, it seems intuitive to have a stop sign there, and for some reason they just weren't done. So this is, it would help the speed issue, but from my perspective, it is a visibility issue and not just a speed control issue. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak? Need your name, address. Have you filled one of the...
Lori Mayhew, 17400 Braykin Drive. I have the pleasure of sitting on the corner intersection in between Durbin Hills and Griffin Park. There is a lot of construction going on at Western and 178th Street. There on city construction, new commercial properties being put up there. So the connection from off of Western that goes through Durbin Hills and into Griffin Park is becoming a thoroughway to escape the traffic and the road construction at 178th and Western. And there are currently no stop signs from Western all the way across until you hit the intersection at Griffin Park Boulevard and 176th Street. So the traffic flows very fast through that way as a nice little cut through for people who want to avoid the intersection there at 178th and Western. I feel that it's necessary to add those stop signs in our neighborhood, just as they weren't put in during the construction of the neighborhood originally. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
I've got my blue sheet. Apologize. I was otherwise engaged before the meeting started. My name is Chris Cotner. I am married to Angela Cotner, so the address is 17517 Melville Lane. Two things to point out. I think the engineering report is very detailed, but I think it was done at a time of day in which it would not show any sort of major traffic patterns. In our neighborhood, the times of day where traffic is most active is between like 7 and 9:30, and then between 5 and 7:30. And then also late at night, because it's kind of hard to tell from the map, and unless you come drive it, but right above where Part 4 is, that blind curve, is a neighborhood, Copper Creek, and it's kind of a straight shot into our neighborhood. They screech around that corner, then they go up 174th Court. There's no impediment here. Turn left onto Griffin Park Boulevard, then screech right on 176th, come all the way through Durbin Hills, come down Bracken, and then out on Western. And it's not so much a speed issue, it's just it's an Autobahn to a certain extent. There are no impediments to cars having to come to any sort of stop here, and it's a visibility issue. The other thing, last thing I'll say is that where my house is located there on Melville, if you want to pay attention to the news, in the next 5 years, we're going to have a car in our dining room at 11:30 at night if something's not done with these intersections, because they're just going to come through this direction, run up into our yard, and crash through our front window there in the dining room. So just watch. If we can't do something today, I guess you guys just keep an eye on the news. So, thank you.
All right, anyone else? Name, address, have you filled one of the sheets out? Excuse me. Tim, we'll need that, yes. If you would, Mr. Clerk.
My name is Eric Nazem, 1412 Northwest 175th Court. I'm fairly new to the neighborhood, so I hope I'm not going to make all my neighbors mad, but I'm kind of opposed to stop signs. I used to live in the Cleveland neighborhood, and I watched stop sign creep happen in the neighborhood, where it became every intersection became four-way stop. And it did not slow traffic. I don't think it made anyone safer. I think it made it worse because people would zoom between the stop signs to make up the time that they had to stop. I understand that stop signs aren't used for speed control. I agree that it doesn't do a great job. Again, I haven't lived in the neighborhood that long, but I have not seen traffic problems. I mean, I've seen traffic, but I've not seen what I consider excessive speed. I think people standing tend to overestimate the speed a car is traveling, so that may be some of that. But I can understand, especially at entrances from other neighborhoods into the neighborhood, the wanting of a stop sign. In the staff report, I saw that there was some recommendations for yield signs, which I think would probably be more appropriate. And so, again, I may be the lone dissenting opinion on this, but I just found out about this yesterday. So since I'm not on social media, I don't know that I get all the HOA communications that the rest of the neighborhood does. So I just wanted to make sure I got here and express my opinion. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, that's fine. Your name, address, and we will need.
Steve Blackmon, 17413 Cranbrook. On 176 and Griffin Drive, it already has a yield sign. There's line of sight issues when we've got cars parked around there. There's a bush, and also I've had situations where a car almost hit me, even though I was following a yield sign and all that. It is a dangerous intersection, and yield signs do not work when it's just, you got the Autobahn going through. So I wanted to just point out the yield sign's not working. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Okay, anyone else here to speak on item 5E, staff input?
All right, you've got our staff comments before you. We did conduct a always stop control analysis based on the city's current, or the commission's current operating policy and procedure. None of these intersections would warrant the use of always stop control based on the way the policy is currently structured. On page 5, you would see that one gentleman had mentioned that the use of yield control. These intersections, based on a volume perspective, would be appropriate for yield control as described on page 5. But beyond that, we did provide some additional drawings in this particular application, which would show how some driveways and some residences may be impacted with the addition of stop control. Because there are a few locations where there are driveways that would fall within the limits of the stop-controlled intersection. So for those residents at those locations, it would have an impact on how they would get in and out of their driveways at times if there are other vehicles present. But other than that, if you've got any questions, I'm happy to answer whatever you might have.
Okay, is there a motion on item 5E? And I would like to note that these can be separated out and take as individual items if the commission would prefer. So if you want to make a motion and break some of the items out, that would be acceptable. Since we don't have a motion, if we were to break any out, does staff have any input as far as?
It would be at the discretion of the commission as to which route what they would prefer to see on these. They don't need, as far as like an action on a yield control recommendation, at an uncontrolled intersection, the commission's policy is that these are items that can be handled at the staff level, at the administrative level, but when it comes to adding stop controls at residential intersections, that falls under the jurisdiction of the commission.
Okay, so let me restate what I believe I heard, was that if we vote no, that staff would have the ability to install yield signs.
That's correct.
Without coming before the commission. Okay, is there now a motion on any of these 5 items of 5E?
Motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve by Commissioner Clare. Is there a second? Second. Second by Commissioner Littlefield. Is there any discussion?
I just want to make the comment, Stuart pointed out that in the agenda packet that there was some additional drawing. I just wanted to make sure that due to the nature of some of these intersections being on cul-de-sacs, that those residents, and looks like you had great support in the canvassing, but that some of those residents are aware that it looks like they will not have the ability to put any guest parking on street in front of their homes. So because of the nature that you can't park within a certain distance of the stop sign. So.
Right, and just to clarify what Commissioner Clare had said, the municipal code is structured such that you cannot park within 30 feet upon the approach to a stop sign. So if your house was at a corner location and you had limited frontage in front of your place, it could be there. You could result in a situation where you couldn't park in front of your house at all because you'd be too close to the stop sign. But in most residential cases, it doesn't occur that frequently, but there are times when, if you've got a narrow lot, there are times when you wouldn't be able to park in front of your residence. You'd have to park in front of an adjacent residence if you had to use the street.
Any other discussion?
I'd like to make the comment that the gentleman your observation about traffic and stop sign is right, about people, that's why we don't use them for speed control, because people will make up the time between stop signs with their speed. If they have to stop here, they just speed up to the next one. It's what you find if looking at the studies. I don't know why. We're taught in traffic school to use the most least restrictive traffic control device to get the job done. And we in Oklahoma invented the yield sign for that very reason, because people that were just blatantly running stop signs. Enforcement, there's no way. What if enforcement went out there and checked for everyone that ran the stop sign or even slowed down? Now, your association wouldn't put up with that for 1 week if they actually came out and enforced the people that float through stop signs. I know in my neighborhood they'd be an uprising. So the yield sign is the same thing. It just gives the driver he feels a little better respectful for the device if he's got the right of way, and we do the studies, if he's got the sight distance to make the decision if no car is coming, what's wrong with keeping my motion going if I'm not needed? The stop signs is just a sign right of way. You need to stop for this one over here, and there's been a bad accident, traffic hazard at an intersection. So I ask you, would you settle for yield signs where these stop signs are not warranted? Would you?
Yes, please, if you would.
I would not. I want this to be considered as stop signs. In a world and in a day of distracted driving, it's not just about the speed, it's about being distracted, and all these kids that are about to turn 16 also, as with their school-age children. I just think that it's a lot safer. I myself, as a driver, I am a home health physical therapist and drive around the whole entire city every day. And so I just feel it's safer with personal experience. And I grew up in Glen Eagles, which is off of Western, and in that neighborhood, which is, I would say, has to be pretty comparable to Griffin Park. There are stop signs in that neighborhood, and I feel that they worked well as I was growing up, and I can think of other neighborhoods that are the same way. So that's just how I feel. Thank you.
Well, I'm in the neighborhood right there in Glen Oaks.
Yes.
So we have the stop signs on Walker coming around the 143rd, and so how many times do you think people float through those stop signs? When you say you're drivers, what are we doing to these kids when we put these unwarranted stop signs and they know and they start floating through them? Then when they go where one's really needed, their driver expectancy's been violated. They say, well, wait a minute, how come I didn't get to float through that one? We need to teach them that, a stop sign means stop. There's a need for that sign.
Right.
So when we violate that to a point, drivers will become accustomed to that, and that's what they come up with, is driver expectancy. We don't want to fool the driver into something that he's not expecting, so we try to we recognize that and keep our devices separated out. I'm a big proponent of traffic calming. And I'm not talking about the speed sign. I'm talking about like speed humps and things like that. Now, a driver's got to slow down to go over that, right? The one that stops sign, he gets to make the decision there. Well, I want to stop or float through or what. I get to make, well, if a cop ain't here, I'm going on. But if there's a speed hump out there, I've got to decide how I'm going to handle that. So I'd like to see more of that put into practice than the other. But that's just my perspective. But I appreciate what you're saying.
So you'd disagree with any stop signs in neighborhoods then?
Most of the neighborhoods don't have stop signs. They start out, the developers don't put them in. They wait for a need, except for certain locations that you can anticipate. If you did a traffic impact study that would tell you what the volumes are going to be, you could go ahead and require traffic control devices put in as developments made. But usually we wait for that's why we have warrants for them. We wait till the traffic conditions demand that this device needs to be put in. You start with a yield sign, you work your way up to stop signs, you work your way up to full-way stops, you work your way up to traffic signals, you work your way up to coordinated traffic signals. It's all a system.
Right, and to that point, we have had a yield at one of those positions, and that's where Steve had actually come in to talk about. And, we actually did discuss the speed bumps that you're suggesting, and it was my understanding that that was more for neighborhoods that are gated also. But we already have, in reference, I don't know about the speed bumps, how that affects the infrastructure of the streets, but we already have large cracks in all of our streets. And I'm just going to stick with what I've been working for the past several months on this being what I would really like to happen if you guys could consider this. Thanmay I ask the applicant a question?
Yes, go ahead.
Amber, I'm sorry. Come to the front here. I'm just curious about, it seems like you guys are very organized, your neighborhood. Did you guys hold a few meetings about this with the neighborhood and canvass the neighborhood, not just via social media, but door to door as well, flyers on doors?
I actually went
Well, I understand you had to get signatures of the homes that were within, but was the entire neighborhood, even if they weren't within the 300-foot radius, was a flyer put on their door, let them know, hey, we want to discuss putting all these stop signs in the neighborhood?
We did not put flyers on the door, no, to answer that question directly. But it was discussed at our neighborhood association meetings on several occasions. And then it was, as you know,
So how do you get the word out about your neighborhood association meeting?
by email and by social media, and they post a sign at our entrance of our neighborhood that says meeting on this date at this time.
Okay. I'm a volunteer in the neighborhood too. I know it's hard to get the communication out, but you have a lot of homes, and what I do agree with Commissioner Miller is the biggest buy-in for all these stop signs has got to start in your neighborhood, because you guys travel your neighborhood more than anybody. And it's very important that, in my mind, that everybody in the neighborhood had the opportunity to come to a meeting to hear this discussion.
They did, and we have had so much support. Honestly, he is in the minority. I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, but he's the minority on this. I've had so much support. So many people that have said, when is this going to go through? And I mean, really and truly. And I think
the thing is I'm not asking if you had people against it or for it. I just, for my knowledge, I just wanted to ask, you guys did everything you could to make sure the residents of that neighborhood knew you guys were going to talk about this. You gave them plenty of time to come and voice their opinion and come in and talk, because the buy-in really has to start with you guys on all these stop signs in there. So.
And I was made aware of this meeting on Tuesday evening when I opened my email, and so I sent, actually, that went out to people through social media that night. I posted it at like 11 p.m., and then, as he said, it went through an email yesterday. So but we've been talking about this for over a year, honestly, so there's been a lot of discussion. Thank you.
You've answered my question. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Any other discussion? Commissioner Littlefield?
Just a comment. You're welcome to sit down. I understand the role of a stop sign. I absolutely do. Me as a driver, I'm going to be noticing a stop sign far greater and far sooner than I'm going to notice a yield sign. I understand that stop signs aren't designed to control traffic. There's two things that this neighborhood is talking about in a very well-supported way, as Commissioner Milner pointed out. There's a speeding concern and there's a cut-through concern. I can see stop signs definitely having a positive impact on helping reduce cut-through traffic. It can annoy drivers to the point where they're going to find a path of least resistance other than this situation. With regard to their effect on speed, Commissioner Miller even noted that perhaps they're not coming to a complete stop, but they're slowing down, which to me is a positive traffic calming effort. If they're 100% totally regarded when they go up, your neighborhood has the option of contacting the Oklahoma City Police Department and getting an officer out there to sit for a period of time and write tickets and get a message across. So with regard to a more effective impact on speed, if you're experiencing that and perceiving it, look into this opportunity as an organized neighborhood association for these driver feedback devices. In addition to these stop signs, that they're there. It's my goal to see neighborhoods start using those things. So that information you would get by contacting the Traffic Management Division, I'm certain, is the source. So thank you.
Any other comments? I would like to add one thing. I think you are spot on that we are living in an age of distracted drivers. But that also concerns me that if you have someone that is distracted with their phone coming up to a stop sign and everyone else is expecting them to stop, that's a problem. So, I mean, just FYI, I mean, we are living in an age of distracted driving and expectations when you come up to that intersection. So just be aware that it can cause unintended problems. Any other comments?
I just want to chime in on one other thing. The graphic that's on the screen before you and back behind me, this is the item that was continued earlier in the meeting. This is the Heritage Hills area. And this is just showing you the current level of stop control, which is present in that addition. And what was going to be considered today was going to be the addition of stop controls at another 8 intersections. Actually, they were conversion from yield-controlled intersections to be replaced with stop signs. So to echo the sentiments that, stop control can be useful for speed control or for volume control, they can be, but I mean, if drivers opt to continue to use a route, they won't have any bearing necessarily on affecting volumes. It might have some influence on speed, but as Commissioner Miller had noted, the primary intent for using a stop sign is to assign right-of-way for appropriate levels of traffic control. But anyhow, that's just to give you a sense as to what other neighborhoods are experiencing and continue to experience. I mean, this is probably one of the most densely traffic-controlled neighborhoods I'm aware of in the city.
Okay, any other discussion? We have a motion from Commissioner Clare and a second by Commissioner Littlefield to approve item 5E. I'm sorry? Was there someone else wanted to speak?
I just need to know if I need to speak a little bit more about 176 and Griffin Drive, because we do have a safe crossing issue there. And if I need to address that more.
You need, if you would, step forward.
Forgive me, but there was one intersection that both of us did petitions on, and they beat us to it on turning it in, and that's 176 and Griffin Drive. It is a crossing issue. It is a line of sight issue. I know this firsthand. I was starting to go through after yielding, and a car sped right through, and it didn't give me time to barely see it. It's a crossing issue. So I urge you on that one. It is dangerous. Please don't make us come back when there is an accident or a death. We'd like to do that before then. Thank you very much.
Okay. Yes, sir. Your name, address.
Bill Perry, and I've got the blue sheet there, and I live just about 4 houses from that on 176. It was an open intersection until 5 years or so ago that I got together enough petitions to put the yield sign there. Before that, it was open. And it was frustrating because I myself was almost in several accidents, and others that I had witnessed were in near misses because of what Steve just said. But because of another factor, 176, if you call up page 31, you can take a look at maybe I'm wrong, it wasn't 31, but wherever, yeah, that's close enough. One of the issues is cut-throughs, as we mentioned, and people speeding. But one of the other factors is that some of these streets are fairly lengthy, and that allows them to get up ahead of speed. That's why runways are so fast, they're so long, so airplanes can get up. What happens here is the speed builds when these people cut through the neighborhood because it is a shortcut, which means it's shorter distance, it's shorter travel time than following the place they should go. And I know that these cars that speed through there are not going to get up enough speed to fly, but they're going to hit some kid that will fly through the air, and that scares the hell out of everybody that lives around there.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay. We have a motion by Commissioner Clare, a second by Commissioner Littlefield to approve item 5E. If you vote in favor of that, would you acknowledge that now?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, those that oppose? Okay, then the ayes have it, motion is approved. We'll move on to item 5F. Steve Lackmeyer has requested a all-way stop controls at number 1 Waynebridge Avenue at Northwest 173rd Street, Wood Sorrel Road and Northwest 173rd Street, and Wood Sorrel Road at Northwest 176th Street. And there is someone here to speak on this.
Thank you very much for your time. First of all...
Excuse me, even though you're speaking again, I need your name and address.
Yes, I can do that. Steve Lackmeyer, 17413 Cranbrook Road. I was advised to ask to have what she had. That wasn't nearly as funny as someone up there suggested. Anyway, they brought up our issues fairly well. If you look at 176th and if you look at 173rd, they act as a racetrack. People are speeding through, and I know you say that's not the issue. But when you're trying to cross a street, it's an issue. And especially when you don't always have the best line of sight, when you're kind of going this way or that way. On top of that, I'll give you one anecdote. There's one woman in our neighborhood, very nice lady. I wish she could have come today, but she was opposed. She just didn't understand the need for stop signs. Voiced some of the things you did. Then she was walking down the street one day with her kids, and back me up, you all saw this discussion, and a car almost ran them over when they were crossing the street. She saw the light. She understood. You'll see we've got heavy agreement on this. The most controversy we've had with our stop sign requests is that it wasn't moving fast enough. I didn't know about Amber's effort until earlier this week. When I found out it took her a year as well, that made me feel better, and I was able to tell our residents, see, it takes a while. We have communicated as best as we could. Because of the way these stop signs line up, we've canvassed about 2/3 of our neighborhood. There was no mention of needing to go beyond social media and all that to talk to all the neighbors, but I can tell you there was heavy awareness. We encourage neighbors to talk to each other. We do not have a formal association. For a matter of fact, we've got PTSD over an attempt to do so. We've tried to be conservative. We initially were going to ask for another stop sign at Waynebridge. After there were some concerns voiced, we decided, or I did, we felt like it was best compromise, just go with Griffin Drive, and that's so close to Waynebridge that we'll be fine on that. Because again, the idea is to get the cars to stop, give the pedestrians line of sight, to have a chance to see those cars. I don't know how to answer the idea that they won't follow the stop signs. I mean, then why bother with yield signs or traffic lights or anything? I do think that we're in an age when we've got a lot more pedestrian traffic. We didn't build sidewalks for decades. We are now. Our neighborhood is very young, just like Griffin Park. We all have sidewalks. We have a lot of porches. It's the way we want our neighborhoods to be. And for a long time, we're designing streets for cars at the expense of pedestrians, at the expense of those on bicycles, at the expense of kids playing in the street like we remember. And I know this is not the time to challenge the policy, but that policy has got to be updated. It was written in an age of automobiles being the only thing considered. They're people crossing the street. We have problems with cars racing through, and I hear the speed concern. I don't agree with that idea, but we need traffic calming. We need safe crossings, and having a stop sign at an intersection gives us a fighting chance to have safer crossings. I can tell you how dangerous it is when I tell you that we had a young man, 15 years old, and okay, we don't have accidents recorded at these intersections, But tell you what kind of traffic we have. He sped so fast into our neighborhood on Western that he crashed right into our monument sign. Then the kid tried to run away, left his girlfriend in the car. And we had to all pony up and fix that sign. But we have a situation. And I'm okay with joining our neighbors in Griffin Park and blaming Copper Ridge or whatever to the west, but we do have a problem. And Sherry will talk more about her concerns as well. But thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak on item 5F? Need your name, address, and you have up to 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much for your time. Sherry Widener, 1128 Northwest 173rd Street. And I have lived in this neighborhood since 2001 when I moved up here from Texas. We used to be kind of secluded. We didn't have Griffin Park that was established around 2009. So the traffic at that point in 2001 was minimal. Things weren't as developed as they are in that area of town that it is now. The increase in traffic, a majority of it is people cutting through our neighborhood. We have grown so much in that area, residentially and commercially. And the new construction, the strip centers and everything right around our area has caused a vast increase in traffic. Our neighborhood is older, but well-established, and we have a lot of middle school and elementary school children. On my street alone, on 173rd, are 3 bus stops on one of the busiest streets that we have, 1 for middle school and 2 for elementaries. So I see the kids out there on a regular basis, Monday through Friday, and the traffic coming through there without stopping, other than when the school buses are there, is scary. I mean, too many kids out there. I understand, they may not stop, but I've seen just kids darting in and out. We're not as fortunate as Griffin Park to have a park. All we have is our kids playing in their front yards, playing in the street with the basketballs, the basketball hoops, and everything else. That is our neighborhood. We're older, but we need something to help curb that traffic in our subdivision. The yield sign is not adequate on Griffin Drive and 176. It's not. I come that way coming home from work. It is not. The line of sight there's too many blind spots. The petition for the Part 1 on Waynebridge and 173rd, coming around that curve when they develop Bracken, it is a blind spot. When you're coming out of Waynebridge and you want to turn left, it's blind who's coming around the corner from Bracken. You're at the mercy of people going slow enough that you can see them before you pull out. It's been in the past 10 years with the commercial development that we will have on 178th and Western. We have an on-queue that's going in that's already been posted. There's a car wash. There's supposed to be a restaurant. We already have a storage facility that is directly behind our neighborhood, as well as a Alzheimer's care unit directly behind our neighborhood. We are just exploding, and we're at the point now that we need to do something to help our neighborhood and curb this traffic. Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else here to speak on item 5F? Please, your name, address, and have you filled one of these? Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm John Musgrove, 17413 Durbin Park Road. I don't live right where the stop times are requested because I live on Durbin Park Road, and we're obnoxious enough that we just park a whole lot of cars in the street so people don't come through down our street. What I'm concerned about is on 173rd, we have 3 types of foot traffic. We have children, we have people walking their dogs, and we have old people. The 2 people who live right at the end of 173rd, approaching the Western, I don't know how they are, but they've been there from a long time ago. So we have a whole lot of old people who do get out in their yards and do cross the street. An interest of mine is the entrance to the neighbor on Western. And we have people walking, possibly with garden tools, down the street, down 173rd, and you don't want to drag it down the sidewalk. I mean, it may be a lawnmower or something like that, so you're in the road, and you don't want a lot of fast traffic beating you up when you're trying to travel to take care of your neighborhood. So it's kind of an eclectic neighborhood, I think. But other than that, I can just echo what my neighbors have already said. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak on item 5F? Okay, staff input?
All right, you've got our comments before you. This application is very similar to the one that you had just considered. I think you've got a lot of input from neighborhoods and residents, so at this point in time, if you've got any questions about the staff report, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, is there a motion concerning item 5F?
I motion to approve.
Okay, motion to approve by Commissioner Milner. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Schuline. Is there any discussion on item 5F?
I'll be very brief. Ditto from the previous application. But one comment. Steve, either one of you two folks that have just spoken up here would make great neighborhood presidents. And I encourage you to...
We're not doing this. No. We tried and failed. It's explosion.
Hey, I encourage you to try again. But the work that you did on your petition is totally complete and tells it all to me. That's just what I wanted to say.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, any other discussion?
Well, I think we realized in all these applications that speeding is the central thread to all of them, that we're concerned about speeding. And hopefully we'll come up, or someone will come up with the traffic calming procedures that would help us with that. And maybe help without looking like that one neighborhood we call Stop Sign City. I'd like to see some more calming devices put in. And I think it needs to probably be at the developer's level, but now how that's going to fit in, I don't know. But some cities require some type of calming device if you've got a 1,000-foot run of open street. To me, that's reasonable. That's really getting to the meat of the issue of speeding. These other devices still leaves it up to that driver and how much time he wants to allow to, whether he wants to slow down or speed up between stop signs or float through a stop sign or that sort of thing. So anyway, but right now, though, I see that there are no other alternative to what we're asking for. So, thank you.
Okay, any other discussion on item 5F? Okay, a motion's been made by Commissioner Milner, seconded by Commissioner Schuline to approve item 5F. Could I have your votes?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Item number 5F passes. That is all the items on the docket except for comments from citizens. Do we have anyone that would like to make comments? Okay. Okay, report from and other items from the Traffic Commission. Commissioner Clare, do you have anything today?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that we recently saw the installation of a mid-block crossing signal on Meridian between Northwest 52nd and 53rd, and I understand that's a long time coming, but as someone that travels that road a couple times a day and often sees people crossing over to DeLisi Park and with the Danforth Senior Center there, people in mobility scooters trying to get back and forth. That signal was located where they now have a shorter crossing distance, so it improves safety, and I think that was a great project, and I know it was probably 10 years in the making, so I'm thankful to see it in.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Littlefield, do you have anything?
Believe it or not, no.
All righty. Commissioner Schuline, do you have anything?
Real quick, I did, to Stuart, I just noticed a new mid-block crossing. Did you come, is this the one you were talking about at Cleveland Elementary?
No, this is on North Meridian between Northwest 52nd and 53rd.
I did also new one at Cleveland Elementary on 23rd, which I think is really going to be slowing down traffic by the school there. I don't know.
Right, both of those, actually, both of those mid-block pedestrian crossings were approved by the commission some years ago.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Miller, do you have anything?
No.
Okay. Commissioner Milner?
I do, and they all left. And I was just going to say I commend neighborhoods that take on the task to try to make a difference in their neighborhood. I mean, getting those petitions signed, that takes hours and hours and hours, and sometimes it's not always the best option or the right option, but if they were here, I would say commend them for the work they do. So,
When they get the petition, what do they ask for? Hey, we want to put stop signs up here. Would you be in favor of that? They don't discuss, well, you know, maybe we've got an issue, maybe we can put a traffic hump or something else. What else would you think we could do? It's always, hey, they go in there preconceived, hey, we're going to stop sign off, please. Oh, yeah, you're my neighbor. I don't want to cross you off. So they sign them just. How many's come to us that would like to take them out? My neighborhood won't know how you go about getting one took out.
Same procedure.
Same position, sign everybody within the. And is the parking, the no parking in front of the stop sign, is that automatic, or someone has to request that before it's put up? If you sign it says no parking here in the corner, that's going to take the parking in front of some of those houses.
Signs like that, we go minimalist on, because, you know, most residents would not prefer to have a parking restriction posted in front of their house. It's like, because under the same section of code, that 32304, there's also, it largely mirrors Title 47 of Oklahoma State statutes. That's got the prohibition that you can't park within 15 feet of a fire hydrant. I mean, the city does not post that inside neighborhoods, so, yeah, everything that's in 32304 echoes state law. But we don't, ordinarily in neighborhoods, we don't really post parking restrictions unless it's a much broader restriction, and that's usually something that's brought forth from a neighborhood.
Red, I really appreciated what you just said. I did a no parking anytime petition in my neighborhood several years ago. And honest to goodness, I think that good neighborhood associations that are communicating to their neighbors, they're getting the input on these things, I think that they understand prior to the petition work being done what is being asked for. I truly believe that. You know, Steve Lackmeyer's instances, they say they don't have a neighborhood association, so I don't know how things go in those. But I can understand historically neighborhoods would have a difficult time with a stop sign petition, being able to have a discussion with somebody that's required to sign it about what are the options. They were never there, and now we actually are beginning to build upon options for them. I am waiting with bated breath for some neighborhood to take on the driver feedback device and see how that impacts them. We're at the very beginnings of this. So 2 years ago, all it was a stop sign. Now it could be, instead of a stop sign, a driver feedback device, and both. So I think we just have to see how this progresses through time.
Well, since you mentioned, I didn't need to bring up another, because I met with our new councilwoman, which recommended me to stay on the commission. But what is our role, if they're talking about us being invited to breakfasts, to explain how people do things? I mean, I wasn't sure how to answer her. I told her we're not to get involved in individual applications. We're to hear them. But I said, does the council know what our role really is? I mean, I don't want to get called into something that I'm not supposed to be doing. But it sounded like they want us involved in their neighborhood canvassing. And to what extent can we go and say what we do?
That's an interesting question, because right before I came here, the planning department had a training for all the boards and committee members that the planning commission staffs. And one of the questions, as a matter of fact, I did a presentation on it, ex parte communications, conflicts of interest. So whatever it is you do, however it is you interact with the neighborhood, you have to be sure that there's nothing about that interaction that would keep you from being fair and impartial when you have that body or that neighborhood appear before you. So if you're out there with them walking the street and you say, oh, I see the problem, maybe you don't have that perspective if you never go out there. Maybe on your own you go out there, but if they're there pointing it out to you, you have to ask yourself if you can still be fair and impartial, because that's your role. If you think you can, then by all means, you could certainly do that.
Well, it's probably always best if you can always direct them to contact traffic management. That's what we do because because at the staff level, we've got a lot of years of experience. We can show them what other neighborhoods have done. We can walk them through the process. We can explain what's going to be required of them, what they can expect, that sort of thing. And so when we present, I mean, we just basically stick to the facts. There's not really commentary to be found in our reports. It's basically a presentation of everything that you as members of the commission need in order to help come to a decision. Now, there's always the imponderables. I mean, there's discussion about, and I talked previously about maybe looking at updating some of the current standard operating policies and procedures, because the majority of stop requests that are presented before this commission, based on those numbers, which have been, those numbers predate my arrival with the city, and I've been here for almost 19 years. So there should probably be some consideration as far as revisiting them, because really, as far as approval of stop signs in residential areas, for years there haven't been any conforming requests that have been presented to this commission. Not conforming meaning conforming to those standards that were adopted probably literally decades ago. Well, it's right, because the city could adopt any kind of policy.
Well, the thing you want to be sure of, though, is to maintain that human element. So if the standard is if Y plus X equals Q, then what's your role? So you're here to look and hear and see what they say and make a decision based on that part. If it was that cut and dried, it might eliminate what it is that you had to consider. So,
Commissioner?
This is fascinating. I've had both a planning commissioner in my ward and a city council person in my ward where we would never discuss a specific item in a specific neighborhood, like this neighborhood is having a problem, go look and see if they need stop signs. But where I've been involved, and I found it very productive, and I found it appropriate, was in situations where there were new development applications, zoning applications. For example, a new commercial entity on the border of a neighborhood, or an old existing neighborhood where there was a planned unit development being considered inside that neighborhood that would reinvent what residential properties in there, instead of R1 going R4 in a particular parcel. And I was invited to sit with the developer and maybe an engineer and a city council person and a planning commissioner prior to that HUD ever being filed, to just get insight on what do you think this could do to parking in the neighborhood? What do you think the impact that this could have on a neighborhood with a commercial development on a branch? So it's all prior to something being filed. But once that was filed, then I left my judgment up to when and if a traffic issue from that development came before this body, I'd had no discussion with it. Sometimes it never did, but sometimes it did. And then I would find myself in a couple of situations where something had been filed before the Planning Commission that involved the traffic element. And I would have a little bit of discussion on that. And my barometer there was, if it came before this commission, and it has not yet today, but if it were, I would push my button and I would share the discussion that I had had, and I would ask this body to make a determination of whether or not I should recuse myself. They could decide to recuse me for that item, or I could volunteer to recuse myself for that item because I had been somehow, privy to some conversation. Does that make sense?
So quickly, Chair, in the event you have a perceived conflict, keep this in mind. Whenever there is a body assembled like that, there are two roles. There's the applicant and there's the reviewer, assisted by staff, and we don't really count in that. But if the applicant is aided by something you say, in the sense that you say, I was at the site and this is what I saw, the rest of your members can't unhear what is said. So if you think there is a conflict, rather than saying it to the body, because that kind of turns you either into an advocate or an opposition to that application, and you have to be fair and impartial to every body that appears before you. So if you have an issue, you think you have an issue, that's what we're for. Please ask us prior to the meeting and away from the hearing of the rest of the members, so that they don't have information that you gained in a different context than is what is being presented, so that you can remain that fair and impartial reviewer.
Can I ask, if an issue came up, though, and we had no discussion with the applicant, and when we got our packet, we privately went to the site to review it, and in talking, we said that, well, I went to this, intersection or whatever. You get what I'm saying? I just want to make sure I'm understanding what you just said.
As long as you're not an advocate for the application, you could go to the site yourself, you could see it, you could make your own, okay, I see what they're talking about here. As long as you don't then come back and argue on behalf of the applicant, because you are either the reviewer or the applicant. There's not a middle person.
There was a point in time that commissioners were handed a packet about 2 weeks in advance without any reports, and the commissioners were expected to go out on the site and inspect firsthand.
Now you have students.
Exactly, and we appreciate that. Counselor, do you have anything?
No.
Stuart, do you have anything?
Outside of our standard monthly report of administratively installed yield signs, I have nothing further to add.
Okay, real quickly, I want to thank everyone for understanding, especially with the voting lights not working today. I would like to mention that Commissioner Kula is not attending today due to the passing of his brother. We want to extend our sympathy to Walt and his family. I would like to mention that at some point in time, we really need to look at trying to get a standardized method for applying stop signs throughout the city. It just seems like that we'll approve this one and disapprove this one, and if there was some way, if we need to review just the overall procedure of our standards of what we're looking at, then we need to proceed with that. But it's just, and I don't know if it's feedback coming from the city to where somebody makes application to where we send out, these are our guidelines, these are some tools that we have available besides stop signs if this is for speed control. Because at this point in time, we don't really have an opportunity to express that till they are here. So I don't know if that's something that needs to, yes, we will hear this, but these are our general guidelines. These are some alternatives,
Well, and if we're contacted, we will try and discuss, other options that residents may have other than just making an application for a stop sign. Some residents are just, that's the approach that they want to take. And so, that's fine. We'll walk them through the process. But other ones, if they express an interest in maybe using the driver speed feedback signs, it's another option there. Probably the reason why you see still continue to see a lot of stop requests is due to the cost burden in order to have a driver speed feedback sign, because they're typically upwards of well over $1,000 per unit. And if you're part of an unorganized neighborhood, you may not be able to pool resources to purchase something like that. So it's just.
Can we charge for stop signs?
I believe your sales taxes that are paid into the city are payment for all that level of city service.
Why do I have to put in a speed hump or one of these feedback signs when I get stop signs and the city's going to put them up? Let's just stay hooked up with that. Could we get a location where we have put a speed hump or whatever so we can show that the before and after speed and actually say, folks, look what we did here and it's working. That's what we need. We need a place that says, look at this. Instead of putting all these stop signs here, look here. It solves cut-through traffic. It's caused a speeding problem. I mean, they're going to slow down for speed hump.
Yeah. Well, actually, we just had a request from a neighborhood. Yeah, we just had a request from a neighborhood that flanks Tulsa Avenue, where it passes between Northwest 50th and Northwest 63rd Street. And I think they may be interested in possibly being like a test bed to try out some speed humps or speed cushions. But we're right now in the process of collecting traffic data, and we'll run some speed studies and then see, because Tulsa Avenue is kind of a unique street because it's a collector road. It's 1 mile long, and it has no controls on it until you're at 50th Street or at 63rd Street. So as far as being able to have a platform to be able to evaluate the usefulness of something like a speed hump and maybe speed hump placement, this would probably be one of the cleanest streets available, because you won't be inserting this other, this traffic calming type device in and amongst regulatory traffic controls. Angle parking standards? We're still working on wrapping up the standards. I mean, we've got a staff report, I think, mostly fleshed out. We've got to do some more field testing. Yeah.
Commissioner Littlefield?
Really appreciate your comment about the possibility of a test area for speed humps. In addition to studying the criteria for stop signs, coming up with some kind of I totally agree. But the trade-off to solutions to not putting them in is going to be content and ASAP. And one of the things that the subcommittee discovered, among many others, is there are true devices that we believe can be effective that aren't nearly as costly. Street painting, outlining, the illusions of bringing in curbs, narrowing roads. The project that was done, and forgive me, I can't remember the neighborhood, 10 Penn, where the intersections have been painted. Class in 10 Penn? Yep. I think that you mentioned that prior to that going in, you did do some traffic counts.
We did do some speed studies, and we're getting ready to go out and do some follow-up studies.
Really
if there is any influence.
Could surprise us one way or the other. But I think that it's great that we could go back and see what kind of impact that may be having or may not be having. Because I'm a believer in just paint of some kind can help calm traffic and perhaps slow people down. And that would be a tool available to neighborhoods that don't have the money to go out and spend $5,000 on 5 driver feedback devices. But there are neighborhoods that are going to be able to do that, and I'm looking forward to the first one happening.
I'd like to echo that just a little bit. That's, when I sit on the commission, one of the things that, in hearing some of these requests, I've asked myself, if they're not going to pay attention to a 25-mile-an-hour sign, and they're not paying attention to a yield sign or children playing sign, all of a sudden they're going to pay attention to a stop sign. And that doesn't make sense to me, that if they are disobeying all the other traffic laws, why all of a sudden because they have a stop sign? So if we can find some way to, either through paint or objects next to the road, to help slow the traffic down to where it's more involuntary, then I think that's the direction we need to look.
We've become numb to the standards. We've all seen stop signs our whole life. When I come down to commission or other purposes coming down to the city during the week, those wide green bike lanes and the painting on these streets gets my attention. Oh, what does that mean? And quickly I figure it out. I have a much quicker reaction to new thoughts, new ways, new ideas than I do some of these old standards. And it's what JB and I keep pushing to see some of this stuff happen eventually, and we're patient, we need to be, but eventually it'll start to happen in neighborhoods.
You know how we can fund a demonstration project? We do 100% enforcement of stop sign city. Take the fine, collect it, give it to us, and we'll go put in some people.
Okay, any
I actually just have one more, while we're on the subject. When an applicant comes, and let's say it is a neighborhood, and they want to do stop signs, and they have expressed to you where we have speeding, do you veer them off into, well, have you thought about speed humps or driver feedback? I'm just curious how that process works when
At
they do
this point in
come
time, the only thing we've got is driver speed feedback signs.
Okay.
But, like I said, some applicants are dissuaded by the fact that, like, to request a stop sign is just, their involvement with respect to circulating a petition and sending in a request letter.
Yeah.
The rest is on us. I mean, so there's really no financial burden on a neighborhood association to pursue stop signs. Now, if you're going to do driver speed feedback, that's kind of an all-on-you program. We'll let you purchase the equipment, but the city will install it to make sure it's installed in an appropriate location.
Sure.
But, so there's, you've got a no-cost alternative, and then you've got a significant cost alternative.
So then to follow up, because I know you guys worked on the traffic calming, we came up, how do those get implemented then? Because I think speed humps were in that. What does that take to get that?
They've been one of the tools that have been discussed in the past,
Yeah.
And at this point in time, like I said, we've got one neighborhood that's thinking about maybe pursuing that. This might allow us to, because we've developed no policies for their use as far as, like spacing. Should they be allowed on a street that's got, X so much volume on it, or is like an arterial, or anything else like that? So we've yet to develop basically standards for use on something like that. Of course, the other thing too is, if you've got like a 1 mile section of roadway, say like Tulsa Avenue, for example, and you have one speed hump in the middle of it, that hump will have a limited area of influence on speed. You'll probably see that you might have like a prevailing speed that's, say it's posted at 25, you get an 85th percentile speed that consistently runs in the low 30s. It may drop to 25 or less within maybe 150 feet or something like that surrounding that speed hump. But beyond that, it has no influence. So, these devices can influence driver behavior, but a speed hump every half mile probably will only be influenced right there at the hump. So if you're trying to look at something that will have an overall impact on driver behavior, which, as Commissioner Miller mentioned, that's all decision. That is choice on a driver's part. He was talking about maybe changing like subdivision regulations or standards like that, where it's self-enforced. You can only go 1 block before you're required to make either a left or a right turn. There are no more long, straight stretches of roadway. So that would be an example of something that's self-enforced.
So as far as like the speed bumps, I follow you. Are we just waiting on a neighborhood that steps up and said, hey, we want to try this, so we can start collecting data?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, as far as the driver feedback signs, I know what those are. Do we have a process for a neighborhood to get those installed?
Yes, we do.
Is it the same? Is it a petition? Do they have to get
Nope. It's just.
They have the money.
They furnish it. They provide us with like basically a letter or indication of no objection from the residents who basically have it in front of their house.
Okay.
And that's pretty much it.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any other items for discussion? Then we are dismissed.